Hello everyone, my name is Abhi and this is Maha Film Fanatic. And in today's video we are going to be taking a look at what went wrong with World Famous Lover. So World Famous Lover revolves around Vijay Devarakonda's character Gautham, who is in a live-in relationship with Yamini, played by Rashi Khanna. And Gautham is a writer who has been suffering from writer's block for an entire year, which of course is not a very long time if you are a writer, but obviously Yamini gets frustrated with him, and she also gets frustrated with his chronic laziness and their routine lifestyle and decides to break up with him. This breakup then motivates Gautham to finally start writing his book in spite of Yamini. So the movie goes back and forth between the fictional stories told in Gautham's book as well as his real life where he's trying to save his relationship with Yamini. The problems with this movie really begin and end with his poor screenplay. There are just too many instances where the characters in this movie just say what they're feeling. Many of the dialogues just state the emotion that the character is feeling at that moment, and the director really never gives the actors an opportunity to just act out their emotions and just perform.
Tired, Gautham, and I'm so bad. My mind, my heart is just bleeding.
The dialogue shouldn't be so obvious. The point of dialogue is to be subtle and clever without telling too much. Yet there are multiple, and I mean multiple scenes where Vijay Devarakonda is delivering monologues directly into the camera, which makes the movie feel like more of a speech about how sad his life is. I also noticed that when there are scenes that are supposed to convey certain emotions, say for example crying, the poor script and the direction is really unable to convey that emotion properly. So a lot of times the director will just cut to side actors or extras crying or conveying a certain emotion as a way to trigger the audience into feeling that same emotion, and most of the time that really never works. There are also a lot of lazy narrative conveniences that are kind of just there to progress the plot further, but it's very apparent that they are very unnatural and it kind of disturbs the flow of the entire movie. I realized after watching this movie that I think Vijay Devarakonda's character Gautham is probably a better writer than the actual writer of this movie. Or maybe not. So there are two fictional storylines that are in Gautham's book that are shown in the movie to compare and contrast his current relationship with Yamini. In one story, Vijay Devarakonda plays a coal miner who is married to a character named Suvarna, played by Aishwarya Rajesh, and is cheating on her with his boss, played by Catherine Teresa. And in the other story, Vijay Devarakonda plays a successful radio jockey in Paris who falls in love with a pilot played by newcomer Isabelle. Now I actually enjoyed the fictional parts on their own. I believe they serve as interesting enough stories or fables. But that's the problem, I only enjoyed them on their own. When I consider how they fit in the entire movie or how they fit cinematically, they just don't seem to add that much value. And again, even though I like the stories individually, I think the director wanted the audience to take away something profound or some sort of message away from these stories that are supposed to fit into the entire movie. However, that just did not happen. Alright, so let's talk about the performances in this movie. It's difficult to accurately judge the performances in this movie because the actors really aren't given any good material to work with, neither are they given solid direction to be guided by. And it's really impossible to give a convincing performance under these types of conditions. But through that, I think most of the actors did a pretty fine job. So because Vijay Devarakonda plays three different characters, I thought his best performance was as the coal miner. He really nailed the accent and mannerisms of the character while also properly portraying the sort of distaste for life and circumstances that the character had. But to me, the standout performance was really from Aishwarya Rajesh. I haven't really seen any of her other movies before this, but I really liked her in this one. She was really one of the only actors or actresses in the cast that was able to work around the poor writing and provide a certain level of subtlety and emotion to her performance. In the Paris sequence, Vijay Devarakonda does a decent job kind of looking stylish and living life on the edge, and Isabelle is just kind of fine. The best word really to describe the performances in this part of the movie is fine. I don't really remember too much from it, so that's really all I gotta say there. And in the present day sequences, I think Rashi Khanna tried to give a good performance, but was really hindered by the poor direction and poor writing, and was really unable to do anything noteworthy. And Vijay Devarakonda as Gautham tries way too hard to be edgy and sort of similar to Arjun Reddy, which is a point that we'll talk about later on in this video. But what really ruined the performances of Vijay Devarakonda and Rashi Khanna in the present day sequences was just the way they depicted their relationship. They tried to depict a mature live-at-home relationship between Yamini and Gautham, but most of the time it just feels very unnatural and kind of forced, and the only thing that's mature about their relationship is just their intimacy. It was really the breakup scene in the beginning that sort of serves as the hook for the entire movie that really took me out of the entire relationship. Rashi Khanna does her best to try to act out the scene, but her breaking point still feels unnatural and the whole situation still feels out of nowhere, even though the first 20 minutes of the movie are spent trying to build tension between the two main leads. And Gautham is the absolute worst character. He's a lazy, self-righteous man-child who thinks he's the victim of every situation, that the world revolves around him, and woe is me. It just gets very, very annoying very quick. And the thing is, he's not the anti-hero of the story. In fact, he's the person that the audience is supposed to be rooting for. Yet, time and time again, I find myself doing the exact opposite. So I also found Yamini's reason for breaking up with him to be completely warranted. So his quest to reunite with her is completely unengaging. And it is shown in the movie that really his only motivation to get back with her is that he's lonely, not that he loves her. What kind of love story is that? They honestly show her as more of a caretaker than an actual girlfriend. It wasn't until the end of the movie where he realizes that he wasn't the victim of the situation that he paints himself as. And apparently, in reality, it was Yamini bearing all the pain of the relationship and the one who was sacrificing. But really, the audience at that point in the movie is thinking, how did he even come to this conclusion? It just came out of nowhere, and also, like, when can I leave? And even then, the writers of this movie still have the audacity to paint this relationship as if it's some kind of Layla Majnu, when at the end of the day, it's just Yamini Gautham. This movie does not have a consistent message whatsoever. The fictional stories that Gautham creates are supposed to represent better hypotheticals of his life that don't involve Yamini, just because he's angry at her breaking up with him. So already the motivation to writing these stories is a little bit iffy. In the coal mine story, he doesn't really see his wife for who she is and gets sort of lost in his fantasy or lust for his boss, who is pretty much just relegated to a pretty face who wears Western clothing. And he ends up becoming the hero of this story because he decides to stay with his family because his wife isn't so bad after all. And the idea is that he compromised his dream of being with this woman in order to satisfy his relationship with his wife, but when in reality it was his wife that was compromising herself for him. What kind of messaging is this? That it's okay to emotionally abuse and scar your own wife and child in order to live out some mad fantasy of yours just because you're mad at life? And in the Paris sequence, Vijay Devarakonda accidentally winds his own girlfriend in a random drag race sequence. And then she becomes blind, and then Vijay Devarakonda gets kind of sad and decides to give his eyes to her. It's a bit of a weird story, but it's supposed to serve as another example of true sacrifice for love. And in both instances, he just acts irresponsibly and gets away with hurting his significant other. Now, these stories would be fine if they were used as sort of tragedies or ways to contrast Gautham's relationship with Yamini, but in fact, they're kind of used to do the exact opposite. Gautham wrote these stories in a way to show that he sacrificed, for Yamini in his relationship, which is kind of the wrong precedent to be setting, and is just overall the wrong message to be showing in this movie. There are also a countless number of cliches in this movie, like sacrificing for true love or turning pain into writing, that just isn't very original, if I'll be honest. But really, the main message of the movie boils down to, if you want to be a world-famous lover You must sacrifice for true love. I think that was the message of the movie. In reality, it's just Vijay Devarakonda messing up time and time again and getting forgiven for it time and time again, which basically surmounts to him learning nothing. I was pretty surprised that for a movie that takes itself so seriously, the creators decided to inject a decent amount of tadka or masala in this movie. Now there are multiple sequences where Vijay Devarakonda is beating people up or delivering mossy dialogue, stuff that you typically wouldn't find in a romantic film. There are also parts of the movie that try to be funny when it just feels really forced. And this has always been a problem in the Telugu industry, where movies that intend to have a focused genre begin to lack genre specificity or are just kind of all over the place for the sake of entertainment. But trust me, in this movie, I was not entertained. I know that Vijay Devarakonda wants to leave Arjun Reddy in the past because it seems to be brought up all the time with him, but I don't think the director got the same message. Because there are too many scenes and instances in this movie that are way too similar to Arjun Reddy. They make Gautham into this angry and edgy romantic who gets his heart broken and yells a lot. Vijay Devarakonda has like 5 different beards again. There are even specific story beats in this movie that try way too hard to resemble Arjun Reddy. For example, in the finale sequence, Yamini and Gautham reunite after a very long time, and they meet, guess where? At a bench. It's just so obvious that the director of this movie wanted to recreate the magic of Arjun Reddy, but this movie isn't made with the same passion or understanding of true love that makes Arjun Reddy so special. At the end of the day, this movie had a really promising concept. The idea of interweaving anthologies written by the present-day character into a story that involves a present-day character is a really clever idea. But the poor writing, direction, and messaging is what makes this movie a true mess. And the endless subplots and twists drag this movie to an almost 2.5-hour runtime, which in reality feels like a 3-hour runtime. The movie is just way too ambitious and is trying to juggle way too many ideas. And even though it had a creative premise, it tries way too hard to invoke the same emotions that past Vijay Devarakonda films have done successfully. Finally, I think Vijay Devarakonda summarized it best.
I did a film called World Famous Lover, which on paper was an amazing idea, but we fucked it up during execution. But again, that was something that I really wanted to, that excited me when I heard it.
Thank you for sticking through till the end of the video. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and drop a comment down below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this in the future. Thank you.